All right, so this whole YouTube thing has not been just all fun and games. We've gotten kicked out of some places before. I've talked about we've gotten kicked out of a dealership before and some auctions. And one of the auctions that we got kicked out of was an auction owned by Carvana. This is an Odessa auction. So we have this question right here: how can you get kicked out of an online store? And I'm the man. I don't know that getting kicked out of something would label me as the man. But what happened early in our kind of YouTube journey is that okay, I'm reporting on the car market, right? That's what I do. Car questions answered. That's the name of my channel. And so Carvana was releasing a lot of reports, and they were acquiring an auction like Odessa, and we were reporting on that. And at the time, they were hemorrhaging tons and tons of money. I mean, just throwing piles of money into the furnace and just lighting them on fire. And arguably, they're doing the same thing now. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but. So I was talking about this. So I was at one of their auctions and was doing just that. And they called me the next day and said, you know what? It was the GM of Odessa that I actually talked to, and he said that you know what? I like what you're doing. It's good for the consumer. You're giving good information to everybody, but I would rather you not do it here. Okay, no problem, no problem. I've gotten other calls from other uh, dealerships, from other auctions, whatever. Just don't film here. You're fine, whatever. And so I stopped, and we found out not too long after that we had been blacklisted by that auction, where I couldn't buy from there anymore. Whatever. But what's funny about this, and why I named this the title and thumbnail the way that I did, is because we got an offer from one of the marketing agencies to actually promote Carvana after that. So it's very funny to me that they kicked me out of their auction, and then they wanted to sponsor one of our videos. See how a lot of these companies operate is they hire marketing agencies, and they reach out to us. And I know you've probably seen some of our videos where we'll have an ad read in the video. We've done like Factor, HelloFresh, lots of different companies. We've had some code readers that have come on to our channel, and we'll promote these things, products that we like, we agree with, what they're saying, what they stand for, things like that. So Carvana was one of these companies that reached out to me and wanted to sponsor me. They went through this ad agency, and it's just interesting. I guess they don't vet who they're actually trying to put on or actually promote, give money to. They were wanting to pay me money to say that Carvana was a good brand or whatever after they had kicked me out. Now, we get tons and tons of promos all the time. And I would say the promos that you guys actually see on my channel, we might only take, I would say, 1 or 2 out of 10 that actually get offered to us. There's a lot of companies we don't agree with their stuff. We turn them down. And Carvana absolutely would have been one of those companies I would have turned down, just because I don't think you should buy a car from Carvana. And really now I can't stand Odessa, and not just because they kicked me out, but because I just don't think they're a good auction. It used to be a good auction. I used to like to go to Odessa and buy cars, but what happened when Carvana bought them is that a lot of franchise dealers actually pulled out of Odessa, because Carvana is the enemy of the franchise dealer model, right? The big car selling models. Carvana disrupts that. You can just go online and you can buy a car, which is a good and easy model, but they charge so much money for this. And we saw that whenever Carvana bought Odessa, that all these franchise dealers pulled out. So what that means for the auction is that a lot of trade-ins have also been pulled out of the sale. So we used to have this Odessa auction that we would go to, and there would be tons and tons of trade-ins, good quality cars. But after all the trade-ins got pulled out, we were left with all the junk. So you have bank cars, which are repos. This is one of the videos that I actually showed at that Odessa auction, was there's tons and tons and tons of repos, and repos that had been there just weren't hardly any of them a year, 2 years before. But because we started seeing that spike in repossessions, you see tons of cars from Wells Fargo, Capital One, One Main. There was just a ton of repossessions going through this auction. And also you have these like we the companies that will buy cars online and just give you an amount no matter what your car is. What they do is when you send them their car, or when you take their car, your car, sorry, and you sell it to them, then they will take it to this auction, and Odessa holds a lot of these cars, and they'll just wholesale those cars to dealers. And that's what a lot of their cars are now. So what that means is when they have basically a bunch of junk cars that are going to this auction, your quality is going to go way down. And I attribute that big time to them getting bought out by Carvana, because they're just losing all these trade-ins from your franchise dealers. And really, I mean, I think the big reason for me getting kicked out was a lot of the negativity, a lot of the shade that had thrown on Carvana as the company. And I know I get a lot of shade from my commenters now recently about talking about, oh, well, if the car market's not doing well, if dealers not doing well, on a tear. Well, I can tell you that the fundamentals of the company versus the stock price, they don't commute. But if they don't compute, but if you actually want to look at the bigger picture of what's happened to Carvana, you can look at their stock price 3 years ago, and it was over $400, and now we're in the hundreds right now. So really, I mean, those who are saying, okay, well, Carvana's going on a tear. Well, not if you really you pull back the picture just a little bit longer, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, and they've still lost a ton of their market cap. And there's an argument to say, well, their stock price shouldn't have ever been above 400, and it should have never been down in the like $10. I think the low was like around $3. It should never been in that range either. And now we're just finding that middle ground. But really, I can tell you that the fundamentals of the company, what the company has actually done, never has made sense with the stock price, and it's not going to, because what you have is you have this element of the market where there's a lot of short sellers. There's a lot of people that have pre-sold the stock. There are a lot of calls, puts, things in the market. These things that the systems that just work in the market that push and pull a stock, and it can be on no news. There's lots of algorithms that trade these stocks day in, day out, and things can be swayed by big financial institutions. And a lot of this stuff has nothing to do with how the company is actually doing. And I know that that recently Carvana has they put out some good numbers from their quarter. But we already have investigations looking into these numbers because they're saying they're making $6,000, $7,000 per car. And that is absolutely ridiculous when you have their competitor, which is CarMax, and they're saying that they're making, well, I can't remember, it was like either $2,200 or $2,600. I think it was actually $2,600 per car. And when you have the grown up in the room, which is your CarMax, that is saying that they're getting $2,600 out of a car and they're having a hard time moving cars. And then right after that, Carvana comes out and says, oh, we're killing it and we're making $6,000 to $7,000 a car. Something's not lining up there. And if I was still able to go to Odessa's auction today, probably after a video like this, I would be kicked out again. But anyway, something's just not lining up. But I want to talk a little bit about how this can happen with a stock like Carvana. So any of these publicly traded companies, they can move numbers around to make it appear to where they're making money somewhere, they're losing money somewhere else. But in the case of a company like Carvana, they sell a product, which is your retail sales of a vehicle. They can do stuff like consolidating debt. They can sell off assets and then release them from themselves. They can have one-time vehicle acquisitions, such as a company that went out of business like Vroom. They can obtain a lot of those cars. You can have any kind of these things that move around that are net positive for Carvana. And then what they can do is they can divide that by the number of retail units sold. And then that's how they can get to a number of around $6,000 or $7,000 per car. And they're not literally making $6,000 or $7,000 per their actual unit sold. But let's go back and let's say that Carvana is making $6,000 or $7,000 per car that they're actually selling. Well, that's not a sustainable model, especially in this market. You can't buy cars and then sell them to the public for $6,000 or $7,000 profit and expect to move any of these vehicles. You either have to be buying them so dirt cheap that you can make that kind of money, and those vehicles are not available. They can't buy enough vehicles, and two, you can plug in your car to any of these sites to where you can sell your car to a dealer or sell your car to any of these entities. You got We Buy Any Car, Carvana, CarMax will buy cars. Any of these places, you can plug that in. And who is always the highest? It's Carvana. So I can guarantee you they're not buying these cars dirt cheap enough to be able to turn that kind of profit. Because when you're when you're looking for a car, I've done plenty of car searches recently. When you're looking for cars, Carvana is not $5,000 higher than any of these other places that you're trying to buy a car from. They are higher because you pay for that ease of being able to point and click and be able to buy a car from Carvana, but they're not so much higher that it can justify that they're making $6,000 to $7,000 profit per car. What they're doing is they're moving a lot of these numbers around. They're making money on their financing arms. They're being able to sell some stuff wholesale. They got a lot of cars from Vroom. There's a lot of moving pieces into this, and they're really designating a lot of that cash and moving it to, okay, this is what we're making per unit because of this total picture over here. So when you see that number coming through a lot of these articles saying Carvana is killing it and they're making $6,000 per car, that's not the case. They're not buying cars for $20,000 and selling them for $26,000 on each deal. That's just not the way the numbers line up. There's some voodoo in there, and in my opinion, it's not sustainable. But anyway, we'll answer some questions in the chat just in just a little bit. So if you've got any, throw them in there, and I'll pull up as many as I can. But just going back to the auction that I got kicked out of, if there was an auction for me to get kicked out of, you know what? This was the perfect one. Their buyer fees are higher than just about any other auction that I go to. The quality of car is absolute poopy compared to the other dealer auctions that I go to. And I go to some small dealer auctions too. And generally, though, the quality from those dealer auctions are not going to be as great as some of the bigger auctions. And it's not even close. The Odessa auction I went to is not very good at all. Just because they've lost a lot of their franchise dealers. Really, I mean, they have this massive facility, and there were some weeks that they were only running 500-600 cars a week, and they had to be losing money on a lot of those deals. Another thing too is the titles. The titles were always an issue for Odessa. And I know if there's any other car dealers out there, you can vouch for this, that Odessa is very, very, very difficult to get your titles in a timely manner. But really, that's not necessarily just Odessa problem. That's a problem with all auctions right now, and it's not just the auction's fault. A lot of these franchise dealers take their time when they're getting these titles to these auctions, and it's something that I wish the auctions would really they would buckle down and try to fix this, because it's a big deal for us when we have to buy a car and then it takes us 30 days to get a title. But that's beside the point of Carvana and Odessa. That's just me kind of just being aggravated at the system at this point. But we'll pull up a couple little comments here. I sold my car to Carvana and they turned it around for $3,000 more. So this is just another example of you're seeing that they're not making $6,000 to $7,000 per unit. So on this car right here, they might have made $3,000 on the actual vehicle, but they're saying that they're actually making money on the loan too. But you can't really know exactly how much you're making on that total loan until the loan is paid off. And a lot of these cars they've sold in the last year, 2 years, those loans, if they're underwriting a lot of those loans, we know that a lot of those consumers have negative equity and major negative equity. So as things get worse in the marketplace, as more repos come into the system, if Carvana has to repo a lot of their cars, they have their own auction, so they can wholesale it through their auction. Even if they're turning around and dumping them there, they're going to end up eating a lot of this negative equity. And it's the same thing for the banks that have loaned over the last 2 years too. A lot of this negative equity is going to end up hurting a lot of these banks, because these customers, when they default on these loans, that's not money that these banks are going to be able to get. And I know that the customer, when a car gets repossessed and it goes to auction and gets dumped, that customer is on the hook for the difference. But that customer wasn't making their monthly payments. They're definitely not going to be able to pay whatever they owe back to the bank. And you can garnish wages, do whatever. But at the end of the day, these banks are really just going to take a big haircut on a lot of these. Let's see here. Is a $15,000 trade in on a 2018 Fusion SE with 124,000 miles. Good. Carfax excellent maintenance records, a good offer. $15,000 trade in on a 2018 Ford Fusion. You know what? I think that's probably a good deal. If you're getting $15,000 for your 2018 Fusion with 124,000 miles, I would say yes, that's a good deal. I'm surprised you're getting that high of an amount. I wonder if that is through Carvana or not. I'd be very curious about that. Ron asked, with more dealer bankruptcies coming, how do I know if the dealer will pay off my loan on a trade-in when he may be having financial issues or floor plan payments due? With more dealer bankruptcies coming in, how do I know the dealer will pay off my loan? So the dealer, before they can actually get the title for your car when you're trading it in, they can't get the title unless they actually pay off that car. So if they want the actual value of your car or be able to do something with that car, they have to have the title for it. So if they do not pay it off, then they will not get the title. A lot of these banks, a lot of these financial institutions, they hold the titles with the liens actually on them. So if they will not release that until they get paid for the vehicle. So you don't have anything that you really have to worry about, because if that dealer wants to do anything with that title, even if they're going through any kind of issues or anything, they can't turn more money on that car unless they pay that title off, and they're already giving you trade-in value for it. They already have money invested into that car, so they are going to want to get that car. All right. Mrs. CQA, how does Brandon know that Carvana purchased cars from Vroom? Mrs. CQA, my wife is usually in the chat with me, but I have some investor. How do I put this? I have some buddies that do some market research for a lot of these companies, and Vroom did sell, from what they're telling me, quite a few vehicles to Carvana when they went under. And I've been to some of these ADESA auctions, and it's quite often that you see Vroom cars there too. So they can not only can they be able to buy cars from Vroom to resell to the public because they have access to them there, but they also they are able to wholesale some of the cars that Vroom had to get rid of. So that is how. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.